Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper and independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! Today I have for you a super simple sketch card. This is a card that you can put together in no time flat. I put together one of my samples in less than 2 minutes. So this is a perfect card if you are needing a simple card that you can make maybe a dozen or even more Christmas cards, thank you cards, invitations, anything like that. So really simple, not a lot of supplies, so come along and craft with me. This card is what we will be making tonight. You can see very simple concept. Here's a peek at the inside for you. And I wanted to show you the stamp set that I am using. This is the Frosted Gingerbread stamp set that I'm using for my verbiage. I'm actually not using stamps, I'm using some of the die cut shapes from the matching designer series paper, or DSP, if you're not familiar with the Stampin' Up! Lingo. And I just had to give you a quick look at this die set. It's really fabulous. There are the intricate dies, like this snowflake, and then the outer shape, which you can cut out shapes such as the ornament here, or the snowflake, or the bell from the designer series paper. And there's this star too. So lots of fabulous ways to use this. And I am simply using one of the die cuts tonight to cut my shape out. So let's go ahead and get started on how to make this card. The first thing you're going to need is a piece of cardstock, half a sheet. This is 8.5 inches tall by 5.5 inches wide, and it's scored on the long side at 4 1/4 to make a basic card base. So I'm just going to fold that in half. Next up, I need a piece of designer series paper. This measures 2 inches tall by 5.5 inches wide. So I am simply going to use my Stampin' Seal Plus and glue this to my card front. And I'm pulling all the colors for my card out of the colors of my cardstock tonight. So next up, I have a 3.5 inch square piece of Real Red, and to be layered on top of that shortly, I have a 3 1/4 inch square of Basic White, and this is what I'm going to stamp on before I glue it together. So first up, I'm going to take Old Olive ink. I need my Stampin' Pierce mat or just a piece of foam or even an old catalog. I need a little cushion under my stamps because they're photopolymer, so they do not have the clear, or they do not have the built-in cushion that the red rubber cling stamps we carry have. So that's why I need the extra little cushion to give me this crisp impression. While I am here with my Stampin' Pierce mat out, I'm going to work on the inside of my card. I need a piece of scrap paper because the stamp I'm going to use is just a little bit wider than my piece of paper. It's this beautiful filigree stamp. I don't know if that's the official word for it, but that's what I'm calling it. It's beautiful and lacy and is a perfect accent for the top of the inside of my card. And I don't want to get ink on my mat, so I'm just using a piece of scrap paper underneath. Before I move my scrap paper, I'm going to add the stamp to my envelope, but rather than the front, like I normally do with my cards, I'm actually going to add this to the back of the envelope flap. So, and I'm going to turn it upside down. So, and stamp it the opposite way that I stamped it inside the card. I just think it looks a little better that way. Just like so. And then one more piece of stamping. Back to the insert and my Old Olive ink, I have my sentiment. And remember, tap gently when you are putting ink on your stamps. Don't press it into the ink pad, or you're going to get ink all the way around the stamp on the edges where you don't want it. Then you will have extra ink on your paper, on your fingers. That transfers to other projects. You'll just have a big mess. So, word to the wise there. All right, so there is my insert. So back to my squares, I am just going to layer these two pieces together and put them together like so. While I've got my Stampin' Seal Plus out, I'm going to put some adhesive on my insert and secure this inside my card. Now, I could glue this on flat to the front of the card. However, I like to pop things up with dimensionals. So I'm going to use large dimensionals on the 4 corners to my square here, and then add one in the middle for good measure. I don't like my cards to sink in the middle when they have a big square or die cut image on the front. I like them to appear nice and flat, especially if it's going to be something I put in the mail. You never know what those postal machines are going to do, so I like to make sure things are going to be beautiful when they get to their recipient. So that's popped on the front. And then I have a die cut ornament from that Designer Series paper. This one I'm going to switch to some smaller dimensionals. It just suits the shape better. I can put the mini dimensionals right at the top and bottom of the ornament. And then again, one on each side and one in the middle, so I don't have a sagging ornament either. Peel the backing off my dimensionals. Now, I could put my die cut shape straight up and down, or I could angle it. I think I'm going to angle this one off to the side like that. Now, if you don't have Designer Series paper with a big image you can cut out like this, you can use a stamp set very easily. So don't be discouraged if you don't have a die cutting machine or a fancy Designer Series paper. You can absolutely use a stamp set and not require any die cuts for this card. Last but not least, I'm going to add a little bling. I have some wonderful gems. That's actually officially the name of them. And they're wonderful because they add such pizzazz to your projects. So I'm going to add just a few. I like to add them in odd numbers, so 3s or 5s. If I get crazy, sometimes I do 7, depends on the project. And just like that, I have a card totally finished, start to finish, ready to go in the mail. Very, very simple. And you can mix up your card simply by changing the positioning of your decoration on the front. For example, the positioning here of my ornaments, or the colors of your ornaments if you have options with whatever paper you might be using. So you can see here I've got some different Designer Series paper, but the card is the same. And then my ornaments are different colors. So quick and simple. And I do have a couple other samples to show you. You do not have to use Designer Series paper. If you have a die cut machine and embossing folders, you could use a strip of cardstock. It's the same measurement as your Designer Series paper, 2 inches by 5.5. Just run it through your embossing machine, and that gives your card another look. Here I stamped on the background instead of leaving the cardstock bare, and I just coordinated my colors to go with my stamp set. You are not obligated, though, to keep the card in the vertical position here. You can very easily turn the card on its side and use the same layout. So, I kind of had that backwards, but it's okay. You get my meaning. So, very, very simple. You can have different options with this card. And as I said, really easy to put together. I threw together this Halloween card in probably less than 2 minutes. I haven't finished the inside yet, but it's simple. Piece of cardstock, strip of Designer Series paper. I did actually change the measurements on this, and I wanted to make really good use out of my 6x6 Halloween paper, so I just kept the Designer Series paper at a 3-inch square and made this one 3 1/4. So it's just a 1/4 difference from the original measurements that you saw me do. I added a stamp and a punch, and boom, card was done. And then 2 more samples to show you. I needed some baby boy cards for my stash, so I created this one. Here I used one of our background stamps. the birch background stamp and stamped tone on tone. So that's balmy blue ink on balmy blue paper. I added a strip of embossed cardstock there. You might not be able to see that the best, but it's there. A die cut image, and then a sweet little message on the inside. And I always coordinate my envelopes with either a matching embossing flap or stamp on the outside of the envelope. And then I couldn't leave the baby girls out, so I made these two where I just picked my color scheme. I wanted to go with green and pink, something girly. And you're not obligated to keep to the basic squares. If you don't have a die cut machine, they're perfect because anybody can cut a square. But if you do have a die cut machine and are layering squares, you can actually create a different look, just a little bit girlier with our scalloped edge squares. So I really loved how this came together, and I just changed the decoration on the front. And then there's the simple message on the inside. So that is my super simple sketch card. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make that. I had a lot of fun putting it together for you. If you haven't already, I would love for you to click the subscribe button and then click the bell for notifications, and you'll be notified every time I go live on the page and every time I post a video. You can also jump over to Facebook and find me at The Faithful Stamper. I do live videos there twice a week, and you'll also see other pictures of projects that I'm working on. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make the card. Take care and happy crafting.